One of the things I find most striking is the presence of Antarctica on ancient maps because we didn't discover it until 1820. What they underscore is it doing on a map drawn in the 1500s and, as far as we know, based on older source maps when nobody knew it existed a satellite image, a heat signature buried 5 miles under the Antarctic ice if it's what some believe it is, then reality as we know it might not exist at all. Scientists at Oxford University have been saying it for decades. We might be living in a computer simulation. But now, a team of physicists has designed an experiment that could finally prove it. What they've discovered challenges everything we thought we knew about quantum physics. A universe's fabric shows patterns that shouldn't exist naturally. This isn't just another theory. For the first time, we have a testable experiment that could reveal whether our world is rendered by an advanced intelligence, whether the universe itself is nothing more than code in a vast cosmic computer. And the strangest part, the experiment is already showing results that classical physics simply cannot explain. The simulation hypothesis has gone from science fiction to mainstream science. Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom's argument is convincing. If advanced civilizations can create realistic simulations, then, statistically speaking, we're almost certainly living in one right now. This goes beyond fascinating, it's scientifically chilling. If true, it means our entire reality, everything you've ever known or experienced, is just data in an advanced software program. The experiments now underway aren't looking for glitches in some movie-style matrix. They're searching for evidence of computational limitations in the very fabric of reality, the same as locating the pixels in our supposedly smooth universe. What makes this groundbreaking is how it would alter our perception of consciousness, physics, and even our place in existence. If we confirm we're in a simulation, it means there's a base reality beyond our own and possibly beings who created us for purposes we're unable to comprehend. The implications extend beyond philosophy. If our universe is simulated, it might mean we could eventually hack its code, potentially granting us abilities that would seem like superpowers from our current perspective. Let's take a step back because if the simulation hypothesis is real, we need to ask, how could the universe as a whole be made up without us noticing? The answer might be easier than you think. Our reality appears continuous and infinitely detailed, but physicists like Silas Bean from the University of Washington have pointed out that any computer simulation must have a finite resolution, a limit to how small things can become. In 2012, Bean and his colleagues proposed that, if space is computed on a 3D lattice, we might detect this grid-like structure in the behavior of high-energy cosmic rays. These particles would travel preferentially along the simulation's grid lines, revealing the underlying structure of our world. Think about your favorite video game. No matter how realistic it looks, if you zoom in close enough, you'll eventually see pixels. Our universe might work the same way, with fundamental restrictions on its resolution that betray its artificial nature. The truly unsettling part: several features of quantum physics already perfectly match the way an efficient simulation would work. Particles only seem to decide their properties when observed, as if the program is saving resources by not rendering what no one's looking at. So, the question that keeps physicists up at night: what if the strange quantum particle behavior isn't a natural phenomenon at all, but simply an optimization technique of the universe's rendering engine? AI comes up. In 2023, physicists discovered something humans had missed for decades. Hidden in the equations of supersymmetry was actual computer code, the same error-correcting patterns used in browsers to fix corrupted data. Theoretical physicist S. James Gates Jr. was stunned when he found these digital signatures incorporated into the fundamental equations describing particles and forces. Not only were these comparable patterns, they were identical to the codes used by programmers. I was driven to error-correcting codes, Gates explained. So why were they included in the equations studying electrons and quarks? This discovery forced him to confront the shocking possibility, the mathematics of our universe literally contains computer code. It's not that scientists haven't found evidence of a simulation before. It's that they've never had a clear idea of where to look. Now, Thomas Campbell, a physicist and former NASA engineer, is leading a team looking for something even more profound. His experiments, which began in 2024, are intended to capture the universe in the act of rendering itself, much like a video game only generates the scenery a player is looking at. What if our reality functions similarly? What if the universe only uses detailed computations when someone is there to observe them? Investigating the quantum window, Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom in 2018 published a paper asking a wild question: if we reside in a simulation, how would we be able to identify it? His argument for simulation isn't claiming that it is definitely taking place, but seriously explores what signs would reveal if it were true. The key idea, not obvious glitches, but subtle computational fingerprints might be detectable. Here's the crazy part: the mathematical patterns in quantum physics, the discrete nature of energy, and the apparent speed limit of light, these could all be limitations of the simulation. Just as video games have rendering distances and frame rates, our universe appears to have fundamental constraints. Physicist Max Tegmark from MIT noted that the universe's laws are entirely mathematical. Forces and particles follow rigid equations, exactly like rules written into software. If I were a Tegmark-like computer game character, I would eventually discover that the rules seem completely rigid and mathematical, simply reflecting the computer code they're written in. But what if we're not just passive characters in this cosmic scheme? What if we could test the simulation directly? That's exactly what the team, led by Thomas Campbell at Cal Poly University, is attempting with their groundbreaking quantum experiments. They're looking for evidence that reality only materializes when conscious observers are involved, just like a video game that only renders what the player is looking at. What makes this approach revolutionary is that it could finally provide empirical evidence that our universe behaves like a simulation rather than merely philosophical speculation. Let's take a look at what would happen if Campbell's experiments proved we're living in a simulation. The repercussions would be significant and far-reaching. Science would undergo a complete paradigm shift. Physics, biology, and cosmology would need to be reinterpreted as explorations of the parameters of the simulation rather than natural laws. A new discipline would have to be established, something we might call computational reality studies. Our understanding of consciousness would be forever transformed if reality only exists when observed, as Campbell's experiments might show. It would suggest consciousness plays a fundamental role in the actual creation of the universe, not just in perceiving it. Religious and philosophical frameworks would face unprecedented challenges and opportunities. Some might see the simulation as proof of a creator, while others would question whether the simulators themselves are conscious beings or simply another layer in a potentially infinite stack of realities. The practical implications could be even more revolutionary. If we verified that we live in a simulation, researchers would inevitably begin seeking methods to interact with it more directly, perhaps even figuring out how to change the code that sets the rules for our lives. Imagine the possibilities: communicating with the simulators, discovering cheat codes in reality, or even transferring awareness between simulations. What was once science fiction could become scientific reality. The most important discovery in history wouldn't just be proof of a fabricated reality, it would be a mirror one showing us that we exist in a created world, potentially designed with purpose rather than arising by chance. Let's place the simulation hypothesis in context with older, more traditional scientific theories. The idea that reality might be an illusion has ancient roots in philosophy, from Plato's cave allegory to Descartes' evil demon thought experiment. But these were purely philosophical notions without experimental backing. More recent interpretations, like the holographic principle, suggest our three-dimensional reality might be projected from information stored on a two-dimensional surface, a concept supported by string theory, but there is still no conclusive proof. The simulation hypothesis gained mainstream attention through science fiction, like The Matrix, but remained speculative until computing power advanced enough to enhance the realism of virtual worlds. These older theories are often dismissed as unfalsifiable philosophy rather than testable science. The real lesson is that reality is stranger and more complex than we once believed. While no simulation glitch has ever been confirmed and no previous experiments have passed serious scientific scrutiny, ongoing experiments compel us to widen our understanding. Perhaps we've been asking the wrong questions about the nature of reality itself. The primary distinction now is that researchers like Campbell aren't just philosophizing. They're creating controlled experiments with the potential to detect inconsistencies in quantum behavior that could only exist if our reality were rendered by an external system. If these experiments demonstrate the validity of the simulation hypothesis, everything about our understanding of existence changes. The experiments now underway represent our best chance yet to determine whether reality is primarily a computational system. Thomas Campbell's quantum tests, Melvin Vopson's information physics research, and the ongoing search for cosmic ray anisotropies could demonstrate that our universe behaves like a sophisticated computer program. We like to think of ourselves as autonomous beings in a natural world. However, the deeper reality of existence may be that we're just characters in someone else's code. What do you think these experiments could reveal? A computational universe, a natural reality with deceptive patterns, or the first evidence that our consciousness is a component of an enormous simulation? Tell us in the comments before we move on to more perplexing physics in future episodes. The simulation hypothesis isn't just a philosophical curiosity anymore. It's becoming experimentally testable, and the results of these tests could fundamentally transform our understanding of reality, consciousness, and our place in existence. Subscribe if you haven't already, because if even one of these experiments shows positive results, it rewrites everything we thought we knew about the nature of our universe.